Okay, let's dive in. We all know resistance training,
Well,
lifting weights, bands, even just body weight stuff. It's super important for building muscle, getting stronger.
Absolutely. It's like a cornerstone recommendation for health, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Is it really the same outcome for everyone? Like, if you start a program, are you guaranteed the same results as the next person doing the exact same thing?
Yeah, that's the big question. And it leads us to this idea called heterogeneity. Fancy word, but it just means people vary a lot.
Individual variation. Okay.
Exactly. And today we're digging into some really interesting research that looks specifically at this, how muscle size and strength gains can be, well, surprisingly different between people on the same training plan.
Gotcha. So our mission today, unpack this study, see just how different the results can be, figure out who these high and low responders are according to the
Hmm.
research, and maybe bust some myths about whether age or sex locks you into a certain outcome, all based just on this analysis.
Precisely. We're focusing on what this big data pool tells us about those individual
Yeah.
responses.
Okay, so let's set the stage. What's the actual source here? Tell us about the study itself.
Right. So this isn't just one small study. It's what they call a pooled analysis,
Meaning?
meaning they took data from 10 different studies that their lab had already done. They combined it all together.
Okay, so they get a much bigger group of people that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gives you more power to see these individual differences. We're talking nearly 300 people in the training group.
And who were these people?
They were all healthy adults, but crucially, they hadn't done resistance training before. So, untrained,
Okay, newbies?
pretty much. And a really wide age range from 19 all the way up to 78 years old. Men and women both.
Wow, 19 to 78. That's broad.
Yeah. And they also had a comparison group, about 70 people who didn't train at all.
The control group,
Right.
to see what changes just normally over time.
Exactly. Helps isolate the training effect.
Makes sense. So what did the training actually involve for those 300 people?
It was a supervised, total body workout. They did it twice a week.
Okay, pretty standard recommendation.
Yeah, aligns with general health guidelines. And it lasted for a decent chunk of time, 20 to 24 weeks. So 5 or 6 months.
And they kept making it harder. Progressive overload.
Yep, progressive. Volume and intensity increased over time. And while it was total body, the main things they measured for this analysis were lower body strength, think leg extensions, and the size of those leg muscles.
Got it. Standard program, well monitored, focused on leg measurements. Okay, so the million-dollar question. On average, did people get stronger? Did their muscles get bigger?
Oh, absolutely. The average results were definitely positive, significant gains.
Like what? What were the numbers?
For muscle size, the average increase was around 5%. Technically 4.8%, give or take about 6%.
And strength.
Strength saw a bigger jump on average,
Yeah.
a 21% increase, specifically 21.1%, give or take 11 or 12%.
Right, so those averages sound good. Pretty much what you'd hope for. But you mentioned variability. This is where it gets interesting, right? What about the individual results?
This is really the core finding. The variation was just massive, huge range.
Oh, huge.
Okay, get this. For muscle size, the changes went from someone losing 11%,
Losing while training.
losing 11%, all the way up to someone else gaining 30% on the same program.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge spread. What about strength? Similar story.
Very similar. Strength changes range from someone actually getting 8% weaker
Weaker, seriously.
to someone else getting 60% stronger. Again, same supervised program.
That's kind of mind-blowing. So the average tells one story, but the individual reality is all over the place.
Exactly. It highlights why just looking at averages can be misleading sometimes.
So how did the researchers actually categorize these people? Like, what made someone a low responder versus a high responder?
They had specific definitions. For the low responders, they basically asked, did this person gain more than you'd expect just from random fluctuation, like in the control group?
So comparing them to the non-trainers.
Right. If your gain wasn't clearly above that normal variation seen in the control group, you were considered a low responder.
Yeah.
For muscle size, that threshold was gaining less than 1.6%.
Less than 1.6% gain.
And for strength, it was gaining less than 5.0%.
Right, so not just zero gain, but really minimal, barely above noise level, and the high responders.
They were defined relative to the training group's average. If you gained significantly more than the average trainee specifically, more than one standard deviation above that average gain we talked about,
Okay.
then you were a high responder. For muscle size, that meant gaining more than about 10.8, almost 11%.
Over 10.8% size gain.
And for strength, it was gaining more than 32.6%.
So really substantial gains compared to the average. Okay, using those definitions, what fraction of the group actually fell into these categories?
The numbers are pretty stark. For muscle size, almost 30%, like 29% were low responders.
Nearly a third, wow.
Yeah, and get this. Within that group, about half of them, so 15% of all trainees, actually had zero change or even lost muscle size.
15% lost size or stayed the same? Good.
On the flip side, for size, about 12% were high responders, hitting those big gains over 10.85%.
All right. And for strength, were the numbers similar?
A bit different for strength. Fewer low responders there, only about 7%.
Okay, so most people did get some noticeable strength gain.
Seems like it. But still, about 14% were high responders for strength, making those really impressive gains over 32%.
Those numbers really paint a picture of just how varied the response is, especially that almost a third were low responders for size. So the question everyone asks, did your age, or being male or female, predict this? Were older folks or women doomed to be low responders?
This is probably one of the most surprising findings from this analysis. The answer was no.
Wait, really? No difference based on age or sex?
According to this pooled data, looking at the magnitude of change, how much size or strength they gained, age, and sex were not significant factors.
So someone in their 70s had just as much chance of being a high responder gain-wise as someone in their 20s?
On average, yes. The potential for response seemed similar across the age groups studied here. Same for men and women, the amount of gain wasn't significantly different based on sex.
Hold on, but don't men usually get stronger overall? Or younger people start stronger?
Well, yes, they did note some expected baseline differences. Younger people did start stronger than older people. That's normal.
Okay.
And interestingly, women actually had a higher relative strength increase, meaning as a percentage of their starting strength, they improved more.
Ah, okay. Higher percentage gain, but maybe a similar absolute gain.
Exactly. When looking at the absolute amount of strength gained, there wasn't a statistically significant difference between men and women overall in this study. The key takeaway is that your age or sex didn't seem to predetermine the size of your response to this specific training program.
That really challenges some common assumptions, doesn't it? Okay, another angle. Size versus strength. If you get really strong, does that automatically mean you put on a lot of muscle? Are they tightly linked?
They looked at that correlation. And yes, there was a statistically significant link. They tended to go up together, but it was weak.
Oh, weak.
The correlation value, this R value they use, was only 0.157.
Which is pretty close to zero, right? On a scale of -1 to +1.
Very close. It means knowing how much size someone gained doesn't really let you predict very well how much strength they gained, and vice versa. They're related, but loosely.
Why is that? Why wouldn't bigger muscles automatically mean much greater strength?
Well, especially when you're starting out, a lot of the initial strength gains aren't just about muscle size. It's about your nervous system getting better at its job.
Neural adaptations.
Exactly. Your brain gets better at recruiting the muscle fibers you already have, making them work together more efficiently. That can boost strength quite a bit, even before the muscles get substantially bigger.
That makes sense. Your wiring gets upgraded.
Kind of, yeah. And the study reinforced this idea. Remember how some people were low responders for size and some for strength? Well, only a tiny fraction, about 3%, were low responders for both.
Oh, interesting. So most people gained something in at least one department.
That's what it suggests. Even if you didn't see big size gains, you likely got stronger, or if your strength gains were modest, maybe you still saw some size change. It wasn't common to completely strike out on both fronts based on their definitions.
Fascinating. So if it's not really age or sex driving these huge differences, what does the study suggest is behind it? Why does person A blow up on a program while person B barely changes?
Yeah, the source touches on this, but admits it's complicated and not fully figured out. They point towards things other research suggests are important, like your genetics.
Our DNA plays a role.
Seems likely. Differences in specific genes, maybe how certain proteins are expressed in your muscles. They also mention satellite cells.
Those are the muscle stem cells, right? For repair and growth.
Exactly. Maybe differences in how many you have or how well they activate could be a factor.
What about things like diet or other activity? Could that explain the variation?
Well, the researchers tried to control for that stuff as much as possible in this study. Remember, these were healthy, previously untrained people. The training was supervised, adherence was high, and they were told to keep their other activity levels stable.
Right.
So, while nutrition and daily activity are definitely important for results in the real world, The study suggests they probably weren't the main reason for the huge variation between these specific individuals in this controlled setting. The implication is that these more fundamental biological or genetic factors were likely bigger drivers of the differences in response observed here.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's bring this all back home. This research shows massive individual differences in gains, not really tied to age or sex. What does this mean for you, the listener, if you're lifting weights or thinking about it?
I think there are a few key takeaways. First, and maybe most importantly, manage your expectations. Your results are your results.
Don't compare yourself constantly to your gym buddy.
Exactly. Seeing different progress is normal, it's expected, based on this kind of research. So don't get discouraged if your gains look different from someone else's, or from some average you read about.
That's really good advice. Takes the pressure off. What else?
Second, it kind of makes you think about those general recommendations like train twice a week. This study showed that works well on average. The average person got good results.
Right.
But if you happen to be one of those people who is biologically a low responder to that specific dose of training, maybe twice a week isn't the optimal stimulus for you to maximize size or strength gains. Now, the study didn't test other programs. It just showed the variability with this one.
But it suggests maybe some people need a different approach. More frequency, more volume, different intensity, something.
Potentially, yeah. It raises the question about needing more individualized programming for some people to really see the results they're hoping for in terms of size or strength.
Okay. And a third point?
The third thing is perspective. Remember that this study focused very specifically on muscle size changes and strength gains in the legs.
Right.
Even if someone is a low responder, based on those measures, resistance training does so much more for your health.
Like what? Remind us.
Improved ability to do daily tasks, better balance, which is huge for preventing falls, better metabolic health, insulin sensitivity, blood sugar control, stronger bones, positive effects on mood. The list goes on.
And those benefits are likely happening even if you're not getting huge biceps or adding plates to the bar every week.
Absolutely. Those broader health improvements are incredibly valuable and likely happen for almost everyone who sticks with resistance training, regardless of where they fall on that responder spectrum for just size or strength.
Okay, great summary. So, the big takeaway from this deep dive. Resistance training is awesome for health, no doubt. But how much your muscles grow or how much stronger you get can vary wildly from person to person. And don't blame your age or sex if your results look different. It's often just biology. No.
Exactly. And considering how different those individual responses can be, even to a standard, well-regarded program, it really makes you wonder, how should we or how should you really measure success with resistance training? Is it just about the inches or the pounds? Or should we be looking at a broader range of markers, functional improvements, how you feel, other health indicators to truly gauge the benefits for you?
That is the perfect question to leave folks with. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.